Hello. Yeah. So thank you everyone for coming to this town hall on building platform co-ops with international membership. The idea behind this is that, with most platforms that people use being consolidated in a few hands and within a few corporations, with no accountability and no say of most people who use those platforms in how it is run and how it is governed and who owns it. There's a general sense of alienation, like when you have entire generations being born under such platforms where the internet is seen as something that's very distant from us. But so the people who are here, they are part of projects that are challenging that from a more community-based, community ownership perspective, where the platforms that we use in our daily lives, which are becoming increasingly part of our daily lives, have not only accountability towards us, but we also have a sense of ownership of how they are governed and they are run as is most conducive to a decent life that we want to live. So what the question here is, how can, when we talk about co-op scaling, what does that really mean in terms of it having an international membership? And the reason where it becomes more important with platform cooperatives is because platforms are more conducive to being shared across borders in real time than, say, physical infrastructure that cooperatives have. So what we are going to explore here is are these few questions. How can platform co-ops create and foster linkages across borders? What are incentives to expand to other territories? And especially keeping in mind that every territory, every region, and even the social segregation within every region have different context and different approach to platforms and how they use it. How can we have some kind of still a generalizable model that could then be reproduced in context-specific ways, such that cooperation along these more community-based platforms is something that could be widespread, and we could scale that form of platforms. And we have an excellent panel here with Sara de Hirsch from SMART, Francesca Martinelli from Doc Servizi, Jonathan Reyes from Fairbnb, and Lucas Reichel from the Mobility Factory. I want to just clarify the format here. So we have presentations by each one of them for 7 to 10 minutes, and then they will be responding to the presentations, and then we'll open it up to the audience questions, and then we can have a more open conversation around these things. So we can start with Sarah here.
It's on? Okay, sorry. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here to discuss and debate with many platform co-ops. So SMART, in a nutshell, because there's been a presentation already this morning, is a social, shared enterprise that allows freelancers to function autonomously, as if they were self-employed, but in solidarity, and with a double solidarity. The first one linked to the mutualization of means, and the second one linked to the legal status under which the workers work, which is the most protective one, and usually the salaried worker across Europe. We were born in Belgium in '98, and now we are present in 8 countries across Europe. This was a long journey. It's important, I think, to say that we were not born a co-op. We were born as a non-profit organization, and we start our international dissemination as a non-profit. In fact, the fact that we became a co-op, and we already had a platform, is a result of this dissemination. So how did the internationalization start? We started doing it because we were mainly implemented in the French-speaking community of Belgium in the arts sector. At the time, we were only working in the creative sector. And for artists to be able to make a living, they have to be able to work a lot. And in Belgium, especially in the performing arts, they often had to go to France. So there were a lot of contacts with French institutions. And as our members performed abroad, there was a lot of demand also from France to have a model like that in France. So we said, oh, well, why not? We met some social entrepreneurs that were active in the cultural and artistic sector. And with them, we decided we'd develop SMART there. And then we found out that if we could do it in France, but we can do it anywhere. And since professional mobility is a really big issue administratively, fiscally, socially for artists, we thought, well, if we can have smarts in many countries, that means we can really solve all the mobility issues really easily from when our members go from one country to another. So we started to have a strategy in which we would be very active in cultural and artistic networks, and that's where we identified partners that developed smart in the different countries. They were usually social entrepreneurs that were active in the cultural sector in their country. After that, so we started to, in our policy, we were really investing a lot. It was a project of mobility. It was also a political project because Brussels is a very international city. That's where I was born, and the founders also had a very pro-European idea. So we really wanted to have this European dimension to the SMART project. So we started to invest in these countries in development, and so the first thing that I want to say is that the first lessons that we have beyond was discovering the cooperative model. We discovered that actually we discovered it outside because in Belgium, when you're in the arts sector, you function as a non-profit organization. But then we discovered cooperatives when we went international. And then we also discovered that the solutions that we provided were not only useful for artists and creatives, but actually for freelancers broadly. So this is the serendipity of it, of learning things you weren't as expecting to. But lesson learned as to the developments that we had. We realized that first thing, you have to find the right partner, and it worked in a lot of countries, and others we had to stop. We also, in France, we started by having offices in different countries, in different cities, because of course we have a platform, a lot of things are simplified by our platform, but we also have a lot of services that are linked to interperson interaction, and it has to be locally rooted. And so we wanted to cover the whole country, but we realized that that was way too expensive as a way to start and develop international development. And so that was one of the first lessons: start with one city in a new country, and then you see how organically that's going to grow. Then we also realized that actually there are many aspects that cost a lot of money that we hadn't foreseen. In all the analysis, the legal analysis were very expensive. Finding people who are creative, who are able to adapt innovative solution is also something quite complex. And then also so there's all this time where you're investing a lot, but there's no return, of course. And then there's also the fact that SMART is a model that starts very small, and then at one point there's a growth, but there's huge growth. And growth is expensive and hard to manage. So these are also aspects that one has to take into consideration when internationalizing. So from this experience, we started to revisit our dissemination strategy, and we developed more a strategy with 3 different levels. The first one is to consolidate where we are already in the other countries with our partners, and to develop more a model of social franchising, which we think is more adapted when you've invested a lot of time and a lot of money. The second one, but it's also a big question of how do you define what is what you're franchising when you have to deal with all the legal and cultural diversity that you will encounter in the different countries. Second type of partnership that we've imagined is more about being a partner with other organizations or cooperatives, but not under a SMART brand, let's say. That could be a second way of envisaging dissemination. And the third one would be more simply exchanging our knowledge, sharing our expertise and our experience with people who want to develop a similar model in another country. And there it would just be like consulting, if you want, and it's not a SMART implication. But as I said, we didn't start as a co-op, and we are now a co-op, and it's also part of the, let's say, the cooperative principle of cooperation amongst cooperatives, which we think is very important when you're doing international dissemination of such models. And I'll stop here for now, and I'll take questions later on, perhaps.
Thank you. Francesca, would you like to go next?
Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm very pleased to be here and to have the chance to talk about this topic. Of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic, our strategy at international level had some stops, but I will tell you more about our perspective. I am currently the director of the Centro Studi DAC Foundation, which is a foundation based in Verona, Italy. And this foundation aims to support workers who face precarity or undeclared work. And this foundation is founded by a group of cooperatives, and the largest is Doc Servizi, which is the largest entertainment cooperative in Italy. And in Doc Servizi, I'm also in charge of international relations and institutional communication. Just to give you a bit of framework about Doc Servizi. Doc Servizi is a worker cooperative that was founded in Verona, in Italy, in 1919. It was created by a group of musicians that wanted to obtain better working conditions and face undeclared work. During the years, the cooperative growth and members decided to create many services to support their activities. And so they create, for example, marketing and communication office, a foreign office, branches all over the territory, a travel agency to help their traveling abroad or in Italy. And they, in 2012, members also decided to introduce a platform to organize their working activity. And this platform become, years after years, a tool of self-management, because at first it was a platform to support the management of discontinuous work. But then it started to grow, and now it connects also members with clients, for example, using showcase websites or an e-commerce that we created to sell members' products. The peculiarity of Doc Servizi is that being a worker cooperative, artists are hired as workers, and so they are employees, and in this way they have social protection schemes. And but at the same time, we call Doc Servizi a self-management platform cooperative, because there is this component of self-management. You know, artists means they need the freedom in the organization of the management. And this model was so effective that year after years, like for Smart, there were many other professionals that knocked at our door and asked her to enter. So today, Doc Servizi have members still of the entertainment field, but Doc Servizi is part of a network of 7 societies, 5 are cooperatives, and together cover all the cultural and creative and technological field. So we decided to create different cooperatives for each professions. And this network in 2019 had more than 8,400 members and closed with a turnover of 72 million euros. Today, the network has 33 branches all over Italy, and we also have a branch in Paris. Now I'm going to explain to you a bit, which is our strategy about the international. But first of all, why do we decided to open this branch in Paris? And we were also planning to open a branch in UK, one in Switzerland, another in Germany, and another in Spain in these 2 years, but I don't have to tell you that we didn't do anything at all, because these years we were thinking about other stuff like everybody, I suppose. But we decided that we wanted to create these branches abroad because, as Sarah already mentioned, mobility in Europe for artists is particularly difficult, also for freelancers, but for artists even more difficult because, for example, they have to respect the Article 17 of the OECD Convention, which means that a musician has to pay taxes in the country where he belongs and also in the country where he's going to play. So double taxation. And if you don't know this rule, it's very complicated then to manage all of your activity. Beyond the fact that consider that in this field there is a lack of knowledge about the bureaucracy, the administration. So it's very complicated if you're alone. And we have a big need we need to know how to manage mobility, also because we have a lot of members that travel abroad. In 2019, of course, we had more than 1,000 members that travel abroad for working reasons, and that means about 12,000 days abroad. And we decided to create the branch in order to support the mobility of Italian members from and to European countries. So I'm talking only about Italian members. And we wanted also to create landmarks of the Italian culture abroad. To define our foreign strategy, we started from our peculiarity in Italy, which are mainly three. First of all, we have a deep knowledge of the cultural and creative system. So at the accountant level, the labor law, the management, organization. Second of all, we have a network vision. That means that we are built in a network, like the network of our societies. And we have this idea that every node should have a specific knowledge of its field. And then we have a stronger relationship with the territory. Consider that we have 33 branches in Italy. To translate this asset in a foreign strategy, we decided to replicate these strong points of our strategy, and that's the reason why we decided to create a sort of bottom-up foreign strategy. That means that we based our creation of branches on the idea to cooperate with other cooperatives and cooperatives that have similar problems or similar ideas, or they are working in a similar field, and they wanted, like us, support the mobility of workers in various in different countries. And so we decided to base our strategy on the principle 6 of cooperatives. Like every cooperative that goes abroad, I suppose, is based on intercooperation. And what does it mean to create a branch with us? It means that we decided that we don't have a franchise system, like we were talking in the talk of this morning with the Morshed. We are more in the federation idea, so the idea is to create a sort of connection among realities that share the same interest. And it means that every structure keep its own identity. We share the knowledge because, of course, we realize also because we study smart case. Yes, because we realize that going in a country where you don't really know the rules exactly because you are not from this country could be very difficult, and a lot of investments of money, and we don't have. Yeah, of course, but we decided also, following your example, to go, to the second strategy that you mentioned, and directly into partnership with other cooperatives. And so the idea is also to support the mobility among countries with European call for tender, and also guaranteeing fair trade. So the idea is to create a community of workers connected through cooperatives, where cooperatives above all work with discontinuous work activities, and together they can simplify the mobility and strengthen also the cooperative reputation in management discontinuous work. So today, for this reason, our branch in Paris is based in Copenhagen, which is a business employment cooperative, and Copenhagen share our same not only interest in work management but also political vision, because we share the idea to create a community where people work in another way, in a different way, a cooperative way. And we created the branch in 2019. So we are still at the beginning, and this situation of pandemic didn't help us at all. But we are working together to define which is the best way to develop this partnership and understand how to organize it, because of course we have a personal identity there, but our personal identity, the legal identity, is there only to support the mobility of our members in Italy. And for example, if we have other members or there are Italian members that go abroad, we suggest them to go to Copenhagen or to SMART. Also, the idea is also to support other cooperatives that work in our same field. And for the moment, I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. Would you like to go next, Lucas? I think it's on.
Hello. Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm Lucas from the Mobility Factory. I'm actually CEO. I'm very happy here to share some insights we had. Just to frame a little bit the context. Yeah, you were, Francesca, you were talking of millions of euros. We are much
smaller company. We are talking of 100,000 or a little bit more. But yeah, we are completely different stage of development of the company. So just as you have this in mind now. We decided, as I explained already this morning, to found the Mobility Factory 3 years ago, more or less, and we directly jumped into the cold water, let's say. We had really an idea that this was a good thing to do, this was the way to go, and we somehow drafted how this should look like, with the local cooperatives becoming member of the Mobility Factory and then having their service for the software. But yeah, we just did it and founded a cooperative and started working. And I will now explain a little bit the experiences we gained in these 3 years. Perhaps this is helpful for somebody who also wants to do something similar. And yeah, most of them are difficulties we encountered. Some we have some solutions, other not. But before I go to the difficulties, also to talk about the really nice thing, and it just came to my mind, you were talking about that you both lived in Florence and not as tourists. So what I most like about our project is that you really engage to people from so many different localities, and you engage with the real life there, with the problems which they encounter when they set up their companies and with what things they have to deal. So and when you visit them, you're not a tourist, you're just you're just trying to solve their problems together. So that's really the very beautiful aspect of, let's say, of my job. So to some things we encountered when we started. One very difficult thing is the rules and how we understand our what we are doing, because okay, we said we are cooperative, we are sharing cars with our members, but there are many ways of how you can do that. For example, there was a member from Germany and they said, yes, we want to do it with our members, but also with other cooperatives. So is this allowed or not? Have they to become member directly from the Mobility Factory or not? Can they be indirect members? There's a whole bunch of questions. They also wanted to give service to non-cooperative entities, like a company. So then this company can offer a public car sharing. And this somehow, for them, it was a logical thing to do, because in Germany, there the energy cooperatives are rather small volunteer organizations. They didn't seem this realistic that these organizations can start up a real business. But of the perspective from Belgium or from Spain, it was somehow more logical that we have to keep this in mind of cooperatives. So we can collaborate between us and find some synergies. So this made some real conflicts, and it needs a lot of time and a lot of discussion and a lot of empathy as well to really understand the other's position, to find some solution. In this case, we find somehow a Salmonic, it's not really solved, but we find a Salmonic solution that if somebody wants to offer the software to a non-cooperative commercial car share, which can make sense if this is a local rooted company in this region, there are no cooperatives, so they can do it if all the members from the country do agree with it. So these are also somehow the affected ones. So we do not decide this at TMF level. We leave it to the members active in this country. What else have we learned? We are a software company, so we develop the software for our members. And one of our promises, or the founding principles, is that, of course, the members can decide democratically what is to be developed in the software. And it sounds very easy and simple, but when you go to reality, it's not simple at all. The software, to manage a software development and having a product strategy, and is already very difficult for a company. Many companies, they don't succeed to have it or spend a lot of money, waste a lot of money in it. So it's even more difficult if you have 14 strategies or 16 strategies on the table, and everybody knows exactly what he needs and what the software should do. So we have some discussion forums where everybody can discuss. This works partly because it's also a lot of transmission of knowledge. If somebody says, I need this feature, and then others react and say, but yeah, we do this in another way, or we do not have this problem because we have a different, we organize our business in a different way. So there already happens a lot of knowledge transfer between the member cooperatives, and this is very valuable. On the other hand, this just piles up in an immense stack of needs, and also creates a lot of expectation, of course, of the members. And then when we are slow at solving them or adapting to them, so that also generates frustration. So here we are now introducing a new kind of selection criteria, which is really based on prioritization by the members, and just simple rules like for every 3 months, pick the thing you think it's most important. And then we work on that, and we do it one by one. Also, very difficult is that we have members who are very proficient in software development or have people working there, and others who have nobody. It's also not a need. Thanks to the Mobility Factory, they don't need technology knowledge in their cooperative. But of course, when then they discuss, it's difficult for them to discuss because they're somehow living in different worlds. But also this we want to address in educate the members to learn how to write software requirements or how to express their needs, that we can solve it from our side. What is also important is that we have very big differences between large members. The two large ones, they have between 60 and 80 cars, and also many small members. And of course, they have very different needs. The big ones, they encounter problems first. If the software has a problem handling so many requests at a time or displaying so many cars, it's not the one with 5 cars who encounters it. It's always the one with the 80 cars. So to these problems, we have to give priority because it's not somehow their fault. It's just the software has to be able to manage that. So this also can generate some things. And of course, the local situations, we always forget that. And especially during the pandemic, I noticed it myself. You stop to travel. You're not visiting anymore other countries. And I remember very well when I first went to Belgium from Barcelona, I walked through the city and I just thought, oh, I'm in a different world. It's it looks so different. Everything is so different. So, for example, in Belgium, they have, in Ghent, they have 5 different car sharing companies. There's a lot of competition between them. On the other hand, they have public charging stations. The city reserves some charging station specifically for car sharing companies. In Catalonia, it's completely different. There are no other electric car sharing companies, but also there are no charging station, very few public charging station. On the other hand, we have to park the cars underground because it's very difficult to have on-the-ground parking space. So we need functionality to get access to garage doors. So there's really a lot of needs which are not shared between the members. And as in this model of having local cooperatives who together own, let's say, the second level cooperative, of course, also the business models are not really aligned. Everybody does something what he thinks is best in this context. And I think on one hand, this is a big strength of what we have. We can adapt really to local particularities. On the other hand, it makes the whole operation as a global, of course, it makes it more inefficient. And what the big players do to align really the business logic on all territories, we don't do that. But perhaps this is really just the place where we are, and for the good and for the bad. Yes, and perhaps a last comment. What I experience, if you try to coordinate, let's say, 16 different businesses in some aspect of them, all of these businesses have their own leaders. So they are really engaged people who set up local cooperatives, and normally the ones who succeed, they're very strong-minded people and know exactly what they want and how to go there. And this works very well for the leaders to set up some organization. But of course, when they are then sitting on the same table and have to define a common strategy between them, it's a different thing. So this is also a challenge, let's say, to manage the expectation and the different between all these powers to manage somehow to find a common way. But yes, here we are, and we are trying our best.
Thank you, Lucas. Jonathan from Fairview.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Well, okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me, for us, to be here today with you. And in our case, I will tell the moment we are now and our experience, but I think we have more questions and challenges to share with you, and I would really like to listen from you and also from the audience some insights, because we are right now in the middle of evolving from a workers' cooperative based in Bologna to really become a multi-stakeholder cooperative structure at a global level, if that can happen, no? Beyond the European level, because this is something that we have to discuss. And well, I will just start very quickly explaining how we are organized today and the way we go international, or And well, in our case, the first thing is that in our case this is not an option, but a need of our model of our project. No, we are a tourism platform that is managing operations already, even if they are not big operations in different countries in Europe. And we are already, from the very beginning, as a product, an across borders product, no? And well, we are today a workers' cooperative based in Bologna with 2 memberships. We have worker members and we have financing members. The voting rights of the financing members are limited to 33%, and then we have the worker members that today are acting. We are acting already as the global enabler, to say it in a way, for the rest of our network of partners. We are basically managing from this cooperative our brand, our marketing, the technology, the way we grow. We have our community department. We have what we call the Fairview Academy, which is the place where we will welcome on board and train and co-learn, because it's not that we train them, but it's a co-learning process. The partners that arrive to the cooperative and that are trying to open a new local node, as we call it, a new destination. And then we work together to activate the destination, finding the social projects, understanding local regulation, finding the hosts, dealing with local administrations. But now, something we discovered is that now we are already mainly focused in our pilot cities, but we discovered, I think you were mentioning it in a way before, Sarah, that it makes sense to start small, no? Of course, to start city by city, but then what we discovered is that the activities that some of our local partners are already doing for a city or for a small region could be already useful for a nationwide, at a nationwide level. So basically, we are now starting to scale at a national level and understand how we can start national operations through our local partners. And then here, we started the debate on how to really structure ourselves at a global, national, and local level to grow, no? And there we are doing it now we have like 2 scenarios for now, which are more a bottom-up one, where in those countries, for example, is the case of Italy, no? or also Spain, where we have already local partners in different cities. We are managing a bottom-up process where we, together with them, are trying to understand how to structure a national cooperative, create a national team that coordinates them, that makes fundraising, that national marketing, all those things. And then we have I wouldn't say top-down, but it's more a key partner leader, we call it. We have a key partner that in a region or at a national level takes the responsibility and is like our main partner to lead and manage the activation of a national cooperative and locally smaller cooperatives or smaller stakeholders that participate in this cooperative. In this whole process, we have we are right now defining the details and the way this global structure could work. And there are different challenges we identify, and I would like to share them with you here in the way we can grow. No? One of them is or go international. The first of them is the tension between top-down versus organic growth. And here it is, for example, in our case, do we define where we want to go and we just work together and set a budget and work to activate that new country? Or we go in a more organic way, listening to the needs of territories, and there where local partners are emerging and want to activate Fairview, we just go there. This is one question that we are having. The other one is in this model, the tension between redistributive and extractive. Our model wants to be and tries to be redistributive. As you know, we share part of our revenues with local projects, but also with our local partners who support us in every city. And also at a national level, we leave part of those percentages. But we are in the debate of how much of the percentage should be global, how big should be the global coordination structure, and how big should be the national one. Where do we put the most of the weight of the operations and the budget in this structure, very low, hyperlocal, national, or global. Then we have also the debate about the tension between representativity versus local ecosystems. I will try to explain this. Do we organize ourselves as a global cooperative where we have the national cooperatives participating, so Spain, Italy, Portugal, and then inside the different stakeholders at a local or national level act as an ecosystem where they interact both, and then they are represented by the national COP? Or is this a problem because we are losing the direct participation of the hosts in Spain, the local ambassadors or the local workers in Spain, because this is happening through a national cooperative? This is also a debate. Another one, you were talking about power dynamics. How do we ensure the vision and the ethics of care are present at every level? I mean, because we can be very concerned about how do we relate each other, about the dynamic of powers inside the group at a global level, but we cannot. Can we control, or do we need to control it if this is being followed in the Italian cooperative or in the Spanish one or in the Catalan one? Well, and I'm finishing. Yeah, okay, so this is till now like some challenges we have. And then some reflections is in, I think there are many things we can do as this ecosystem of cooperatives, and I think there are others that should be done at a government level, and I was happy listening to some of the things that Francesca Bria said yesterday. And one is that I think a more fiscal federalism model at an European level would help us setting same conditions for national cooperatives in every country, for example, in Europe. And then the other thing I ask myself, and this is something inspired by you, Sarah, I listened to you saying something like this in one call, and is, I don't know, maybe I misunderstood you, but we are, as cooperatives, trying to be sustainable businesses, being viable and everything, but then we are competing in the same market with companies that are basically successful because they are not taking into account a lot of externalities that we are taking into account, but we are competing in the same conditions. Can we, I mean, shouldn't we get some help or work, I say it in a more privileged way with the help of public bodies at an European level at least? This is something I think we can't do, but we would need. And then some things we can do, and I finish at this ecosystem level, is I think would be, I feel many of the COPs here present are doing the same stuff in parallel and without really intercooperating, because we are really focused on being alive many times. And I think it would be really cool to have a common structure, very operative structure that would support us when, for example, doing research on how to arrive to a country, what legal forms do we need, even at a co-marketing level, supporting each other in the places where we are present. Well, yeah, I have many other ideas here, but... And then then I finish. I have also to share with you a project we are doing with Resonate. I don't know if Rich is here. I don't think so. And Pavilion, which is, we call it COP Credentials. It's like a cooperative passport, we could call it. The idea is to have one unique self-sovereign identity, or the thing you do with Facebook or with Google when giving your data to them to access to many platforms, but as a unique shared identity to access all the cooperatives, and then not just from the end user point of view is interesting, but also it would allow, this is what we are doing or trying to do, to exchange services and promote services between the different cooperatives. This is something we are starting from these 3 COPs, but I think would make a lot of sense to work on this at a PCC level as one very specific action to promote all this co-marketing and services exchange between us. And I don't know if I did it too long, sorry, but this is it. Thank you. I'm curious to listen your feedback.
No, that was excellent, Jonathan. Thank you so much. Like, I think one thing that's a common refrain is like everyone sees value in expanding beyond the local level or beyond the territory and beyond the country, and there is something about like it being based on a platform that makes it much more conducive to it, and all these projects that come about where you partner with like local organizations and to be able to have some context-specific analysis together with you know, the things that have worked for you elsewhere being put together and these resources being shared. One of the tensions that you mentioned, for instance. I think it's super interesting, but I feel like we don't have too much time, and I would love to have this conversation for like a few more hours. We could have a conference just dedicated to this. I feel, yeah, but I also want to hear from the audience if there is like some more general comments or questions that people have. We could take that in, like 2-3 of them, and then we can have another round of responses. Does that work? Or is there some, are you like inching to say something, anyone here? Okay. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. So I think it was amazing. Congrats to the 3-4 cases. I think it was really inspiring. I was trying to see a little bit which is the why reason of really going to becoming international. As far as I understood, and maybe I'm wrong, I think in the case of Smart at Coop and in the case of Dog Servici, itself, the business model is not a platform business. In the sense it's connecting users with another user. So it's a different business. That is, we become a cooperative using a digital tool in order to make all the individuals, artists, to really come together. Okay, if I understood well, maybe I'm wrong. So it's not like Fairview who is connecting people looking for an apartment with people who is offering an apartment and connecting, or like the case of the mobility factory that is connecting people willing to have a service and people having like a car sharing. If I'm right, so I think in this case, as far as I understood, in your case, being local in your local region is already sustainable, but then you want to, if this makes sense locally, why not to open up to other people using the intercooperative model? In the case of Fairview, as far as I know, it is a model to actually say, in order to become an alternative, we need to open up many possibilities. We have 17,000 users, but we need to become an alternative. So we multiply many locations with the possibility that multiplying many locations, we might be becoming, I don't know if it's the network effect that Eva was telling us this morning or something that actually might make sense. And I think in the case, Lucas, you mentioned this morning previously, that in your case, it is in order to develop a powerful digital software, we need to multiply the number of users of this software in order to be solid. No? So I was trying to see, because I think based on why we internationalize ourselves, then maybe the different ways and the purpose that it says is totally different. And I don't know how you see it or if this is a right understanding. And then besides what we need is what we would love to see. So which is the vision of what we would love to see? I don't know if this is something that how do you align in the projecting the vision that might be there, no? But I don't know, I think that was a little bit of the thought, you know? Why a platform gets global or gets international membership, and what might be the different reasons. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jose Mari. Any other questions before we go for another round? Okay, I guess we have enough to digest here. Sarah, you want to start?
Sure. In fact, there are different types of platforms and they have different aims, and you identified that quite well, I think. On the other hand, for example, for us, the platform was an opportunity to facilitate the burdensome, time-consuming dealing of what is, you know, how much do you have to apply. If an app can do it instead of people repeating the same thing all the time, it liberates a lot more time for advice to the members, but it also allows to manage much more members at the same time, therefore to create more income and therefore to mutualize more income for our members. So that's another aspect that can be linked to the internationalization. It may not be a need, so the first one was mobility, but then there's the fact that with a platform you can really have that scaling up, and if you do it internationally you can even go further in that, and it's also about sharing a model, disseminating an alternative economy also, which I think is crucial, indeed. And so, yeah, so those are the aspects. We have to take into consideration there are different growth and different needs for internationalization, that's for sure. Probably for the platform co-op world, there's a lot of, whatever the type of platform, there's also a need to work with the allies. Dimitri spoke of that this morning. We need to work also with the cities, networks of city and social economy. We need to work with unions. We need with the people who are in environmental issues. If we want to make another economy, because I think that's our main aim. Our aim is not just to make platforms and co-ops, it's about having another economy, another world, which is fairer, which is greener, which answers to the needs and the challenges of today. And this is urgent, and so therefore we really have to go and get those allies.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I totally agree with Sarah, of course, also for Doc Servizi. Doc Servizi was born 30 years, more than 30 years ago, so, platform movements didn't exist. We were born like a classical cooperative to answer needs of workers that needed better working conditions. The difference, the peculiarity, like for Smart, is that they were artists. And artists always anticipate needs and ideas, and so at a certain point they decided to introduce the platform in the same way to manage work in order to optimize some the burden of the bureaucracy and all the activities, and also I have to add to give transparency in the use of data, because if you don't have a platform like the one we have, the management of this kind of cooperative is not so transparent, because there are tons of Excel files that are shared only within the administrative group. And so you're not sure where your data are going to be used, how are they going to be used, because in Italy there are many cooperatives in the field of the arts. Doc Servizi is only the largest, but there are like 80 cooperatives from really small 6-person to our biggest one. There are also in the middle others. There is also Smart It. But the very important thing is how you use technology. What I learned studying also the platform cooperativism and new cooperatives such as Fairview is that there are two schools of mind. There are long-lived cooperative, long-history cooperative that decided to use technology as a tool for the member, and so it's like a tool for transparency, a tool to support the activity of members, and then it can also become a B2B or B2C tool, because we create, for example, an e-commerce or a travel agency or some activities that are connected with the general tool. And then there are, of course, cooperatives that are born from the claim, clone the art of Airbnb and create a cooperative version. I think that, of course, we have different purposes, not only for internationalization, but for, I think, the general strategy. But, of course, we can find maybe connections, and I really like this idea of cooperative credentials. For us, maybe it's not so useful. I mean, we just have access for our members, but maybe for the e-commerce or for other. I mean, this moment is really important to understand how to connect to each other, because we are not so many doing this alternative. So, well, I hope that we are going to find a way to connect also these two words that are a bit different, also in the cooperative platform movement.
Lucas?
Yes, I also like the idea of the authentication. We're already doing this between cooperatives who are using the same authentication token for their software and for the bigger one, but yeah, this would be on a much bigger scale. Be very nice. Just yes, to the vision, why are we doing this internationalization? Yes, of course, it's to grow, to have more members, but you also could argue, why don't you grow just in one country? Perhaps it's easier than to grow directly internationally. One part of the vision also is to have to create this network of organizations, I think it's a fantastic asset. So you have a network of organizations which gets used to work together in whatever, to collaborate. So when new needs, and we're trying this as addressing the energy cooperatives who already do also some connections. So why not also amplify and do it in electric car sharing? And for example, nobody knows what the future brings, and the autonomous cars, they are, it's since 10 years, it's in the future, but yeah, perhaps one day they will come. But this will completely transform all mobility services from one day to the other. And then the thing we have or will have is the network, and we'll have many organizations ready to implement perhaps completely new type of services, because with autonomous cars you don't need parking, so you just they move around, and it will be an inferno if everybody has its own autonomous car moving around, just avoiding parking space. So better have them also shared and cooperatively owned. But yeah, the network is also very important to be ready for this.
Thank you. No, well, I don't have too much to say to the comment that Jose Mari said. You said it. In our case, our project is born to become and to be a global alternative. We need to, I like the debate that Vera and Morse had this morning, no? Starting to ask why do we need to grow. And in our case, we want to grow and we want to be a global alternative, cooperative alternative. We are not, I want to clarify, we are not just an alternative to Airbnb, but we are a different model, but we want to be a global platform for regenerative tourism. So it's really, from the very beginning, a need to be international. And nothing to, I will just retake the interest on the cooperative credentials. As I mentioned, it's a project that we are, for now, doing with Resonate and Pavilion, but our will is to open it to everyone and work together on this. And I would like to, if you want to visit coopcreds.com, I think it's, there is a forum and there is also a small survey we did to listen all our voices and start understanding how we can make it real and really start promoting intercooperating between us and really promoting at least some co-marketing actions between us and foster ourselves as an ecosystem, as a very concrete action. So that's it. I don't know if there is anything else.
Thank you. I mean, because I feel the heart of this debate is really the principle that, I mean, as we all know, that Francesca mentioned about the principle number 6 of the ICA, it's like cooperation among cooperatives. Like, we share the infrastructure that we can, and this can be useful, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel and like discover these things again and again and spend energy there, so that there could be a shared infrastructure to develop this kind of alternative like ecosystem that could serve as like a challenge to the status quo of these dominant platforms, which have their own different extractive like practices, right? I mean, just putting that like again in the frame of like what everyone has said, like I just want to ask if there are any more questions or comments, because we are at like time. And we could have like one closing statement from everyone, but I just want to open it up to the audience. If anyone has any questions, you could raise your hand now. Yeah. Ian.
A very brief one. Sabine from Smart Co-op Austria. If the co-ops grow and they grow internationally, how is it with the, and I mean it formally, with a democratic process? That's a crucial question for me. Do you have any ideas on it?
Any immediate responses?
You mean democratic, how to manage the, how to come to the decisions? Yes, I was also thinking when you're mentioning the country-specific organization, if you have some different levels. We also had this discussion and we have given up on it a little bit because every country is so distinctive. So we have returned to the one member, one vote. it's just like this, the very original one. It can be unfair because a country where there are many small ones have more votes than a country which are few big ones. But yeah, it seems the less bad one. Let's say it's how we do it up to now. But the discussion is also ongoing, and we have similar issues as Jonathan mentioned.
No?
Maybe, well, no, I just have a comment. And this is something I mentioned this morning. I think beyond, what I'm concerned about is beyond voting, which is, of course, very important to understand. And we are in the middle of this conversation, and this is one of the scenarios we are discussing, the one member, one vote for the countries. I think it's very important to have the, I don't know how to call it, bodies to promote ethics of care. This is something I was discussing with Vera a lot on this. To really having cooperative, walk the talk, basically. Have cooperative dynamics also in the way we relate to each other, have open and participatory spaces beyond the voting itself. I think it's crucial. I think in SMART you have like groups, no, to work, am I wrong? You have like work groups, no, to work together on bringing solutions and shaping it together. I don't know how it was. I'm very, very curious about this. But I think beyond voting and the democracy spaces, it's really crucial to promote this culture and these kind of spaces in a permanent way in the company. And then the problem there, as I was mentioning before, is that we have to be viable and make business, but also do these things. And I know it's not easy. But beyond the democracy and voting, I think that's really crucial.
I think in Sabina's questions, there are different elements because there's the democracy within a local or national co-op, and that can happen in different ways. And in Belgium, as you mentioned, we have, of course, the elections of the board, the General Assembly, and all members, shareholders can vote in one person, one vote. But then there's the question if you go international, what is the link between the mother and the others if you're in a franchising, for example, cooperative? And that's another issue because you can of course develop all your democratic participation within your territory, but then if you're financially dependent on another organization, it has its limits. And that's in fact something that has to be thought upon when you're in that specific model. Yeah, so there's different levels, let's say, of democracy also. If you're in a federation, it's going to be another aspect, more closer to what Lucas was explaining. And those are crucial questions that have to be asked, and I think at any democratic organization.
In our case, it's a bit different because, as I told before, we create branches with an identity that is only for taxation, but it's not a cooperative. It's just a branch of the Italian cooperative. So actually, we rely on the democracy of the cooperative that held us, but in the sense that if you want to do a project, work on a project together, as a separated realities, we work on it. But we are totally free to manage our branch since it's just a part of the Italian mother, so it has no personal identity. We just relate with the cooperative that hosts us, actually.
Wow. No, we are really at time now. If anyone has any really comments that they are itching to speak from the panel here, now is the time. No pressure. Because the things we've spoken about, like there are so many themes here that we can keep unpacking, and I really love this conversation because it shows that, like, because all the projects here that people are involved in, they're all inching towards some form of like international membership or like aspiring towards it, already working on it, they've already started it, and like it's just interesting to have this like almost an ecosystem being created through those efforts, like that are replicating not just like the specific models, but the values of that cooperative ownership, like on platforms. So I would love to keep continuing this conversation, but we are at time now, and thank you so much.